Some might call Mr. Kavanaugh the Zelig of young Republican lawyers, as he's managed to find himself at the center of so many high-profile, controversial issues in his short career. From the notorious Starr Report to the Florida recount, to this president's secrecy and privilege claims, to post-9/11 legislative battles, including the Victims' Compensation Fund, to controversial judicial nominations, if there's been a partisan political fight that needed a good lawyer in the last decade, Brett Kavanaugh was probably there. And if he was there, there's no question what side he was on. Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the D.C. Circuit is not just a drop of salt in the partisan wounds, it's the whole shaker.
It was April 2004. Senate Democrats just baffled at the time that the White House had sent over President Bush's staff secretary for a position on what is arguably the most important court in the country after the Supreme Court. It took the White House 2 years to get that nomination through because of fierce resistance to the nominee, because of his background. It took so long, they actually had to have a very rare second confirmation hearing on him in 2006 after he was initially nominated in 2003. But something happened at that second confirmation hearing that ended up being a really big deal. Watch Brett Kavanaugh's answer here. It's Democratic Senator Dick Durbin questioning him about the administration's detention and interrogation policies. So this is the George W. Bush era. This is Guantanamo, black sites. This is torture, so-called harsh interrogations. Senator Durbin asks Kavanaugh what he knew about a key architect of those policies. Kavanaugh responds by saying he had no idea, wasn't involved.
Senator, I was not involved and am not involved in the questions about the rules governing detention of combatants, or and so I do not have any involvement with that.
I do not have any involvement with that. Turns out that was not true. Turns out Brett Kavanaugh had been personally involved in White House discussions about that issue, according to a report published about a year after Kavanaugh got confirmed to the D.C. Circuit Court. When that report came out, Senator Durbin wrote Brett Kavanaugh a letter. Dear Judge Kavanaugh, by testifying under oath that you are not involved in this issue, it appears that you misled me and the Senate Judiciary Committee and the nation. Months later, when he became chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Patrick Leahy actually wrote again and basically referred those alleged misstatements by Judge Kavanaugh during his confirmation, referred them to the Justice Department for possible prosecution. He wrote, quote, false testimony by any witness is troubling and undermines the Senate's ability to fulfill its constitutional duties on behalf of the American people. My concern is heightened in this instance because the subject matter of the possibly false testimony was highly controversial and played a critical role in many senators' consideration of Mr. Kavanaugh's nomination for a lifetime appointment to the bench. Mr. Kavanaugh's responses to written follow-up questions from Senator Durbin reinforced the impression that Mr. Kavanaugh had no awareness or involvement in the legal justifications for the policy on detainees until it became public. Senator Durbin told Roll Call this month that his office had no record of a response from Kavanaugh to that letter that they sent him 11 years ago. And obviously, the Justice Department never prosecuted him. But Dick Durbin is still on the Judiciary Committee. Democratic Senator Pat Leahy is also still on the committee. Are they going to resurface this now? Does this end up being a bigger deal now that Kavanaugh is back in front of the committee he reportedly lied to when he was before them the last time 12 years ago? Joining us now is Sherrilyn Ifill, President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. Ms. Ifill, it is nice to see you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
I wanted to ask about how you foresee the fight over Judge Kavanaugh's nomination, how you foresee it unfolding over time, and whether we should look to the previous battles over his confirmation for a lower court as a sort of predictor in terms of how things are going to unfold here.
Well, I think, Rachel, it's not actually a predictor, because I think this is going to be so much bigger, so much more of a brawl. The stakes are so much higher, certainly for civil rights groups, for women and many others. The stakes are as high as they can possibly be. But think about this. This is a president who is under a cloud of investigation. You've talked about this, as have other guests on your show. Many of the issues that are going to emanate from the Mueller investigation may make their way to the Supreme Court. This is a president who's flirted with the idea of pardoning himself. So this whole process is already under a cloud. And the president nominates someone who, as Chuck Schumer said, has kind of been involved in all of the past sticky controversies of politics. He was an author of the Starr Report investigating President Clinton. You just described his role as an advisor to President Bush and all of the issues that involve detainee mistreatment and misconduct. All of that now has to be pulled out along with 10 years of decisions on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. He stands before the mic last night, and the first words, given all of this out of his mouth, is something patently outrageous for a nominee to say. He opens his mouth and says that no other president has consulted more people, more widely, from more backgrounds than this president in trying to determine and get input on who the Supreme Court nominee would be. Why would he say that? It was such a Trumpian statement. It was something clearly that the president wanted him to say, and he said it at precisely the time when he needs to demonstrate independence, given the statements that he's made about whether presidents can be prosecuted and indicted and so forth. So this is off to a rocky start. Regardless of what they want you to believe, this is going to be a very difficult battle. The Republicans have a razor-thin margin to deal with. What happened to Judge Garland looms over this process as the Republicans try to take Brett Kavanaugh to meet with senators. We have to remember that these senators would not even meet with Merrick Garland, who is the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. And we have this voluminous record. We have some of it, a lot of it we don't have, the emails that we want to receive. And we have to painstakingly look at the record of this nominee, particularly because the stakes are so high in terms of civil rights and women's rights in the course of democracy in this country, but also because of the president, who is under a cloud of investigations. This is about the integrity of our democracy, the rule of law, the integrity of the court itself. So this is going to be difficult. It's going to be hard fought. It's going to be long. Anybody who's telling you this is going to rush through, that may be what Mitch McConnell wants, but that cannot happen if this is going to be a process that is true to the advise and consent requirements of the Constitution.
Sherrilyn Ifill, President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. Thank you for being with us tonight. I would like you to come back in the next few days to talk about one other element of this that I think it's a little premature to talk about yet, but it's going to come ripe in the next few days, which is the interaction of the legal and political fight here with what we're likely to see in terms of a protest movement, in terms of direct action and people mobilizing on this issue. I look forward to having those conversations with you ahead as we see this unroll. Sherrilyn, thank you for being
back.
All right, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
With us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.